Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Drenda Williams, the Associate Director for Operations at the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. We call it NIFA. I'm delighted to welcome you to our USDA NIFA Funding and Public Facing Dashboard Technical Assistance webinar. We are recording this session and it will be posted on our website. It's an honor to see such a distinguished group of university stakeholders who are instrumental in leading the nation's who's leading the nation's agricultural research and extension programs. Thank you for taking the time to attend today. This session is hosted by the NIFA Learning and Development Team, and this team is comprised of staffs across the agency, and we're dedicated to providing high-quality training and resources to support your success. We are excited about the establishment of this learning and development team as we have hosted both online and in-person sessions. These sessions are designed to increase NIFA's outreach to ensure equity and accessibility in our federally assisted programs. Today, our goal is to share essential information on assessing legislative authorities, policies, and guidance for NIFA funding. We also will do a live demo of our most recently published public-facing dashboard. And we are continuously aiming to provide resources to assist in managing NIFA awards more efficiently and effectively. So I hope you find this session informative and beneficial, and we encourage you to actively participate, ask questions, and additionally provide feedback. Once again, we want to welcome you to our technical assistance webinar, and again, thank you for joining today.
Susan Rice will be beginning with our topic on policy, but I'm just going to quickly just give an introduction to our presenters for today. We have Tara Warner, who is a division director for our financial management division. We have Susan Rice, she is division director for policy and oversight. Kim Whittet, who is our senior policy advisor at the Office of Grants and Financial Management. And then we have Alexis Navarro Negro, who is our director for planning, accountability, and reporting staff. The topics for today's webinar were going to be NIFA program funding. We're going to go over award information regarding policy, common questions and findings that you'll have at site visits, and then we are going to talk about our funding dashboards and provide you with a live demonstration of those dashboards. All right, so first off, we have the NIFA program funding. And I believe I'm going to be passing this over to Susan Rice.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. So on the following slides, I'm going to provide some context for the information you will see on the executive dashboard when Alexis comes on later in the presentation. So I'm going to provide a couple examples and then discuss some general info. So on the dashboard, you're going to notice that for each funding source, there is a link to the associated assistance listing. So an assistance listing is formerly known as the CFDA. It provides a detailed description of federal programs that provide assistance. These listings are available to the public, and they outline the various program authorities, attributes, such as authorization, purpose, eligibility, and match requirements. You'll find when you go to these links, there is a lot more information in there, but these are some of the basic things that you would probably be interested in. So next slide, please. Okay, so here I've done a couple slides with some examples. So for instance, on the executive dashboard, if you go to the Evans-Allen 1890 research capacity grants, you're going to find a link that's going to take you to the assistance listing. Within that listing, you're going to find a section for authorizations. This is going to tell you what kind of legislative history there is and where you can find the updated US code. So every time you go to the 7 USC 3222, you're going to find all the information that is the latest. So those are updated whenever there's anything new that's included, say, in the Farm Bill, any, additional institutions that have been added. All this information is going to be in that US code. So in the assistance listing, you're going to find which US code applies to this particular program. Additionally, in the assistance listing, you're going to find purpose. The purpose is outlined in the authorization, the US code, and in the assistance listing, you're going to find this purpose under objectives or use. And this is going to tell you all the details, mostly in general, of what the funds can be used for. Now, when we get into some of the competitive programming, the priorities are a little more distinct. But in the capacity program, you're going to see, much like what's written here on this slide, general in nature, but provided to promote the programming that is authorized. For instance, in this one, it's agricultural research. You're also going to find in the assistance listing a section on formula and matching requirements. And if you go back to the authorization, it should match the match section that's listed in the US code. So this is just an example of how these the assistance listing lines up with the US code for the various programs. Next slide, please. And here is another example. This is the Hatch Act capacity grant. Again, authorization is going to be in the US code, and it will also line up with your assistance listing information. Purpose is going to line up with the objectives and use. And then the match in the US code is going to line up with the formula and matching requirements section. Next slide, please. So since we're discussing funding source, purpose, and priorities and requirements, it is worthy to mention here the role of the authorized representative. As you see, the authorized representative, or AR as it's commonly referred, is the grantee's organization designated representative for matters related to the award and the administration of that award. Here is listed some of the duties of this AR. They will submit proposals on behalf of the institution. They're going to receive and accept the award. They're going to, by signing as the AR, they commit the awardee's time and resources to the project. They commit the awardee to complying with all terms and conditions of the award, to submit post-award actions, and otherwise act on behalf of the awardee institution. Now, a lot of times in the capacity funding authorizations, you'll see a reference to director, agricultural director or treasurer. This is just mostly another word to describe the authorized representative. They're responsible for making sure that when the grantee receives the award, that they are using the funds for the purposes outlined in the award and according to all regulations and policies. Next slide, please. So now we're going to go into a little bit of award information and award policy at NIFA. Where can we find the information that we need? Next slide. So the NIFA policy guide is NIFA's federal assistance guidelines for how you should manage your federally funded project. The policy guide is the central source of NIFA's administrative guidance and for grants and cooperative agreements. Throughout the policy guide, you're going to find links to other guidance documents. And so when you're reading through it, if there's a link there, you should go check it out and see how it relates to the subject that you're exploring. Again, you can find the policy guide here in the link on the screen. And any questions, policy questions you might have, you can send to this address, policyguide@usda.gov. We will provide a response to your inquiry. And additionally, we are always looking for feedback. We would like to make the policy guide as user-friendly as possible. So if you have any comments or helpful feedback, please send those to us too. This inbox is monitored and you will receive a response. Next slide, please. So for all of NIFA awards, on your award face sheet, you will find reference to the specific terms and conditions that apply to your award. Here is a listing of some of NIFA's various terms and conditions that are applied to specific award types. Also included, the links should be active and you can go directly from this presentation to those terms and conditions. You can also find them on our website. I've also provided, we're always updating depending on any new executive order or update to federal guidance. We're always updating those and trying to improve upon the customer experience. So you will see when the next updates are expected with each of these sets of terms and conditions. Next slide, please. So within the policy guide and within the terms and conditions, you will find references to the Title II Code of Federal Regulations, also known as a uniform, oh gosh, I just lost it, uniform guidance. The uniform guidance gives you all the federal requirements for administrative cost principles and audit requirements for your federal awards. Recently, as you all may know, OMB provided updates to the uniform guidance in May of 2024. Here is a list of some of the highlights. We will be updating our terms and conditions as well as the policy guide with these updates. The updated guidance will go into effect October 1, 2024. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Kim, and she is going to provide some additional information related to this guidance.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes.
Oh, good. I apologize for my challenge earlier. I have a terrible echo though, and I'm going to do the best I can with the echo. Next slide, please. So as Susan mentioned, we follow a lot of guidelines to enable you to administer your federal grants. Cost considerations for these grants are critical throughout the life cycle of the grant. You, as the recipient, are responsible for the efficient and effective administration of the funds through the application of sound management practices. The recipient assumes responsibility for administering federal funds in a manner consistent with underlying practices. I'm going to mute myself because the background is so bad. As such, costs associated with federal grant awards must be examined within the scope of our authorizing legislation, making sure that we follow what Susan referred to earlier through the assistance listing, where we can access the legislation, the request for applications, which also references the authorizing legislation, and the notice of award. The authorizing statute does contain the authorized uses of the funds and may also contain other unallowable activities or costs. NIFA also mentioned our NIFA policy guide that has additional information, our award terms and conditions, and also the Uniform Guidance Cost Principles. This is under 2 CFR Part 200, Subpart E, which helps us determine allowable costs for sponsored activities. Recipients must also follow their internal organizational policy and the project plan that they've outlined through the grant application process. It's important to note that allowability of costs under NIFA awards also may be governed by requirements specified in this program legislation, regulations, or specific terms and conditions, which will take precedent over some of these general provisions like our policy guide and the uniform guidance. So we have to be careful over which may override some other precedents. Allowable costs follow the principles that these costs must be reasonable, necessary, and allocable to a NIFA award based on applicable guidance, ensuring that we give consistent treatment as non-federal costs, follow generally accepted accounting principles appropriate to circumstances, and we must conform to any limitations or exclusions established in the cost principles or within those award terms and conditions. A cost, even if it's included in the award budget, may be deemed unallowable during the award, even if it is not, if under the award or does not have the required supporting documentation. Subrecipients and contractors under grants are subject to the requirements of these cost principles as well, and to any other additional requirements imposed by the recipient in order to comply with the terms and the conditions of the award. Next slide, please. So as I talked about earlier, 2 CFR 200 Subpart E does detail out the cost principles associated with administration of federal awards. These cost principles are used to determine the allowable costs incurred by grant recipients. They also establish the standards for the allowability of costs. They provide detailed guidance on the cost accounting treatment of costs as direct or indirect costs. They set forth allowability and allocability principles for the selected items of costs. It's important to note that these are for the purpose of cost determination and are not intended to identify the circumstances or dictate the extent of the government participation in the financing of a particular program or project. It's also here to ensure that the government does bear its fair share of the total cost as determined with other accounting principles. And again, that the costs are necessary, reasonable, and used for the purposes authorized in the statute or the regulation. Next slide, please. Now, I want to talk a little bit about cost sharing and matching. Matching is a type of cost sharing, typically measured as a percentage of project costs. Cost sharing or matching means the portion of the project cost that is not paid by the federal funds. Many of our NIFA programs do require applicants to pledge to pay a portion of the total project cost. The program authorizing legislation governs this requirement, and NIFA must follow it for matching requirements. If the grant has matching requirements, it will be indicated in the request for applications, and all grantees must follow the requirements for matching funds set forth in the uniform guidance, which I have it referenced there as 2 CFR 200.306. Matching funds must be verifiable in the grantee's records. are not included as contributions for any other award, are necessary and reasonable for the accomplishment of the project, are not paid by the federal government under another federal award unless it is authorized specifically. They are provided in the approved budget when required by NIFA and conform to provisions of the uniform guidance. A recipient may ask for a waiver of the matching requirement if it is authorized in the program legislation. This is done by making a written request to NIFA, setting forth the basis, the circumstance, and the causes to support this action. NIFA may waive the matching requirement whenever specified, whenever specific criteria are met. The eligible institution must submit any request for a waiver for matching requirements. A waiver application must include the name of the institution, the type of the federal funds, meaning capacity funds, research, extension, Hatch, the appropriate fiscal year of the request, the basis for the request, the current supporting documentation, and the amount of the request. Next slide, please. Apologies, just finding my notes. So no-cost extensions are an opportunity for a recipient to extend the project period or the period of performance of the grant. NIFA may grant a one-time no-cost extension of time for up to 12 months to complete an award. No-cost extensions are typically granted when additional work remains to be completed and the recipient organization still has resources remaining to complete the work. However, the mere fact that funds remain at the end of the initial project period is not sufficient for a no-cost extension. When more than one no-cost extension of time or an extension that exceeds 12 months is required, the extension must be justified in writing and approved by NIFA in advance. Usually, no more than one no-cost extension or an extension of more than 12 months is permitted unless there is some exceptional circumstances. Once a no-cost extension is executed via an amendment to the notice of an award, the period of performance is then extended without additional funds being added to the grant. Next slide, please. I've created this chart as a hopeful capacity program reference chart to be able to reference each of our NIFA capacity programs, the period of performance within the legislation, the provision for carryover of funds, what the matching requirement is for each of our programs, and if a match waiver is allowable. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but it is a really nice quick access chart for your sponsored programs office or for you as administrators to use when needing to understand some of the nuanced details of some of our programs. Next slide, please. Now we're going to move on to some common questions and findings that we've found as it relates to allowable costs within the NIFA grant awards. Next slide. Tara's now going to provide us with a little background on some common questions that she's encountered. Tara?
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. I'm Tara Warner. I'm the Financial Management Division Director here at NIFA. So one of the common questions that we often have is, how can universities determine how much has been awarded, how much is utilized, how much is remaining, and how much should be spent? And how should it be spent, should I say? So your first thing that you should always check is your award phase sheet that comes with your package when you are awarded a grant. That gives you lots of vital information that answers these questions and also gives you vital points of contact. If you still want additional information, you can also use the ASAP system. The ASAP system is the Automated Standard Application for Payments and is ran by the United States Department of Treasury. Both NIFA and you all, grantees, are users of that system, and you can get inquiry-only roles to run reports on your ASAP accounts to find out the answers to these questions. If you still have additional questions, you can reach out to your POCs at NIFA. You can reach out to awards@usda.gov, or if you're an 1890s institution, you can reach out to 1890@usda.gov. And you're always welcome to reach out to ASAP customer service at usda.gov. These are email accounts that, even though they're shared, they are ran by real people, not bots, and we get back to you as soon as we possibly can, usually within 24 to 48 hours. Next slide, please. Now I will hand the baton over to Susan Rice to answer a couple more questions.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about, well, regulations, rules. What do you need to do to handle your award with to be prudent and to follow all the guidance documents that are out there. And knowing that everyone at some time or another is selected for a NIFA site visit, I wanted to touch briefly on some of the common findings we observed during that review. Now, keep in mind, these are the most common items that grantees struggle with. So it may be prudent to take a look at, what your organization is doing in these areas to see if you might need some improvement. So one of the general areas that we find that folks have trouble with is the time and effort reporting. So when we go out on a site visit, we're going to look to see if you have supporting documentation or internal controls to validate that the charges for time and effort are based on actuals and not on the original budget estimates. This might mean that you have some sort of certification process that you go through to validate the charges that you've done, say maybe through a quarter. But you have to be able to document that that certification has taken place and that you have a mechanism by which the employee, their time is reviewed by the certifier. Best practice would be to develop time and effort reporting policies and procedures that are regularly reviewed for all of the salaries and staff time that is charged against your federal awards. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have just a list of some of the other most common site visit findings. And so I'm just going to go through those briefly. Lack of segregation of capacity funds in the accounting system. So you must, I think Tara's going to talk a little bit more about this, but you must have each federal award you get, you need to be able to segregate that within your accounting system. What that means is you need to be able to say, okay, this particular charge occurred for this grant, and you must be able to trace it all the way back through to the source in your accounting system. Federal and matching funds must be accounted for according to the period of performance through a unique fund or a sub-fund code. You can't use capacity funds as revolving funds. They must follow what we just talked about: period of performance, a unique fund, and a unique sub-fund for whenever those, for whichever award they are connected to. Annual awards are available for the period of performance designated, and you must document that in your accounting system, those periods of performance. They can't be used to supplement previous awards or for future awards. They must be used for the period of performance that they were awarded for. Capacity funds cannot be used for indirect costs or indirect cost, and equipment purchases must have prior approval. Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied. So I'm going to turn it over to Tara again, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Susan. So as Susan stated, and also relating back to some things that Kim stated about allowability, you're not allowed to commingling funds. So what is commingling funds and why is it not allowed? The definition of commingling refers broadly to the mixing of funds dedicated for one approved use with unassociated funds. It often describes an awardee's improper mixing of their grant funds with other non-grant funds belonging to the institution. So funds specifically budgeted and or received for one project may not be used to support another unless the legislation specifically says so. Next slide, please. So commingling and misuse. Recipients of federal grants have been awarded funds, you all as grantees, to carry out the goals and objectives identified in the grant. These funds are subject to certain regulations, oversight, and audit. So please always remember that as grantees, you are also stewards of the federal funds that you receive. Grant dollars must be used for their intended purpose, and grant recipients must account for costs and justify expenditures. Next slide, please. So there are repercussions, unfortunately, for commingling and misuse of funds. Using federal grant dollars for purposes other than their intended use can result in recoupment and offset from other grants. They can result in fines. They can result in suspension and debarment, which means that you will not be able to most likely ever receive federal funds again. And they can also result in criminal and civil prosecution. I know that these all sound very harsh, and although commingling and misuse does not always arise from ill intent, the repercussions will remain the same regardless of the intent. So I will provide an example. This is real life, of course, I'm not going to provide any names. I was asked a question that, okay, we have a bus that was purchased with grant funds for a particular use that's in alignment with the program. Can that bus be used by the athletic department off hours? The answer is no, that is illegal. So please don't do that. Please ensure that you always ask questions and come back to your NIFA POC if there's any questions, because there are situations that are not that clear cut. There is an old saying that says it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission at times. That is not the case here, because as you see, that last bullet says criminal and civil prosecution. So just please take this very seriously and ensure that you always keep that with your NIFA POCs to ensure that you are not commingling or misusing your funds. At this time, I will pass the microphone over to Alexis.
Good afternoon. I am going to share with you a resource that's fairly recently developed. So next slide, please. So the NIFA grant funding dashboard is public and it went live last June, so just about a year old. And the real purpose of it was we wanted to have an interactive tool that would provide information on NIFA grant awards. We wanted to be more transparent and make sure that this information was accessible, which is why we put it on our external website. And we have the link here. I'm sure the team will talk later about how you'll get this information, and the webinar will also be recorded and posted as mentioned previously. And that's it for this slide. Susan, can I switch out sharing screens with you to do the demo?
Of course, I will stop screen sharing now and you can take over.
All right, thanks so much. See if I can get this going. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you so much. So on our external website, nifa.usda.gov, let me see if I can move this out of our way. Kinda. If you go to the data tab, It's the first link, NIFA grant funding. Give that a second to load. And as you can see, this information is nearly identical to the slide we were just on. Just give some background information about the tool. There's also a user guide linked here, and it is available in both English and Spanish. And I mentioned this is just about a year old, so we have a lot of email addresses, but if you use the tool and you have feedback or you have thoughts, please email us at electronic@usda.gov. We would love to hear it so that we have an opportunity to improve, if we are able, add things to this tool. So you'll see that there are 4 separate tabs in the dashboard that's embedded in this page. Each tab has the same filters going across the top, so those will stay the same. And it notes here that this is just information for grant awards from fiscal year 2018 forward, and that really just has to do with the most recently passed Farm Bill. So on this first overview tab, you can filter, obviously fiscal year is pretty straightforward. Susan mentioned before the assistance listings. This data is sourced from USA Spending. So a lot of the terminology used here is directly from there. And so for some of these, we have a little question mark here with some helper text in case that terminology is not familiar to you. Grant type, you can search by capacity or competitive. You can search by state. Parent recipient, so again, that's a USA Spending term. What USA Spending does not have is a way to search specifically by land grant university, but obviously for NIFA, that's a big deal. So what we did is our data analysts supplemented on the back end of this dashboard a table so that that filter could be applied here, which I think is really useful. So going across, this is showing everything. So for all the fiscal years 2018 and forward, it's showing you totals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter specifically by our land grant types just to narrow it down a bit. So as you filter, you just click apply and let the filter run. You can see that it's working because it's going to tell you it's processing. And then once it's done, just click the arrow to pop that back up. And so you can see that since 2018 for our land grant universities, 10,309 grants have been awarded with just under $10 million obligated or more than 10 million, 77 federal assistance listings comprise that. And then 103 different organizations with, I assume, different UEIs received those grant awards. And as you go across the fiscal years, you can hover over and see the number of grants as well for each fiscal year as you go along, as well as the totals. And then as you go down, you can see which programs awarded the most in order. So using the bar chart. And as Susan pointed out earlier, maybe you're looking at this list and you're looking at the names and you're not really familiar with what this assistance listing is. The title's not ringing a bell or it doesn't sound familiar. If you simply click it, this box will pop up and then you can navigate to sam.gov. And once you do, as she mentioned, it'll show you this is in fact McIntyre-Stennis. And as you move down, it'll give you information on the authorization. Sorry about the scroll, the eligibility for this program, the use of those funds. Oh, keep on going. I think I passed it. There is a formula and matching section. There it is. So that is available for each of the links there. And then once you're done, you can just click it again to make that go away. So then moving back up, I'm going to go over to the funding map tab. And again, the filters are the same. This is based off the 118th Congress. So as of January 2023, sometimes my computer likes to cache information. So I'm seeing this number is different. So I'm going to clear this filter so that it's not filtering something without my okay. And then on this page, it finishes loading here. You can filter by congressional district, but it's a lot. And some states also have very few congressional districts, so it varies. But it's going to show you the total amount of NIFA funding obligated, as well as the total amount of match funding provided. And then this little filter here allows you to toggle back and forth between the two. So there is a view by state, and you can hover over and see, for example, again, I don't have any fiscal years filtered, so this is giving you everything from 2018 forward for South Dakota. But if I wanted to see the match, I could just toggle, load again, and then I could hover over to see the match funding provided by a state. This filter here will also let you see it by congressional district. So when you select that, you'll see that the map has changed because now it's giving you the congressional district view. So as I mentioned, you'll have states that have many different congressional districts, and then you'll have some that maybe have 2 or 3. But again, you can toggle back and forth from a state view, congressional district view, and also from a NIFA funding and a match funding view. On the side here, it's also going to give you highest to lowest, whether you're looking at NIFA funding or match view. It's going to also adjust as you toggle those filters. And if you're interested in a breakout, there's a little plus sign under the state here. And if you click that, it's going to break out those districts for you by state for those states that have multiple, so that you can also see the spread across the congressional districts. And that really makes up this entire funding map tab. It's fairly straightforward, but helpful if you're interested in your particular state or maybe a neighbor state. Clicking over to the matching tab, make sure that I don't have anything cached. All right. Again, you'll see here the same filters. And again, you see NIFA funding and amount of match funding. No fiscal years are filtered. So this is giving everything from 18 forward. And here are just some breakouts between capacity and competitive grants. And as you see going forward, the difference between NIFA and match funding for each of the fiscal years. And you can hover over and see those totals like similar to the other tabs. Down here is where you can get a lot more information. So what you're going to see here, and of course, as you filter, it'll make it a little bit more targeted to what you may be interested in. Your grant award number, the parent recipient, the recipient type, state, assistance listing. And what it's going to tell you here is, was match required? Was it waived? And that's a yes, no. It's going to tell you if it was a competitive or a capacity grant. The cumulative NIFA funding, so that's going to be for that entire award. It's also going to give you a cumulative match, the fiscal year, and then it has NIFA funding per fiscal year and match per fiscal year. And that's really more the transactional accounting entries that happen over the life of a grant, as opposed to that cumulative funding in the other column. So a lot more information down here. It's not going to tell you all of the things that were discussed before about match. It is a little bit limited, but we hope that this provides some additional information for you to research, to inform, to be knowledgeable, like I said, about your institution or maybe your neighbor institutions next door in your own state. And lastly, on the download tab, this is where you really can take this information and utilize it how you see fit. You filter as you wish. You apply all the filters that are relevant to you and what you're interested in for your search. And once you do that, I'm just going to say I'm interested in these first 3 fiscal years and hit apply. And once that's done, let's say I'm only interested in the land grants and maybe I just want certain states. I'm just kind of making these up. So we'll just hit apply. And once it loads that for you, just hit click to download data, and it's going to ask you if you want it in Excel or CSV format. I'm going to click CSV, but you can choose either. Click download, and then it will show up in your browser. And once you open it, move this over to the other screen, it will show up for you so that you can pivot that information or copy and paste it into a more readable format. And we hope that this tool being out helps you, that it's putting information in one spot for you to access. And again, we would love feedback if you're able to get in there and play around with it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. And I am thinking we might move to Q&A. Thank you.
All right. We'll go ahead and open for more general questions. If anyone has any that they haven't had a chance to ask yet. Also, I wanted to let everyone know that right here we have a QR code to provide us with some feedback for this technical assistance webinar here today. We encourage you to click on this or scan it and click on the link and fill it out to let us know how we're doing and provide us with any additional information that you would like in future sessions. Looks like we're getting a few more. As we take a minute here to read through them, we can hopefully generate a response for you. I wanted to go ahead and respond back to one of the previous questions that was asked. When is the waiver request of cost share submitted? So if you're requesting a waiver of the matching requirement, when should this be submitted? You know, this should be submitted as soon as reasonably possible. If not with your application directly, that you contact NIFA as soon as possible to indicate that you're requesting a waiver. As part of our award process, we are verifying your match and the requirements. And if we see that they are not met, we will withhold funds and work with you directly to obtain the full match, or as you may be requesting a waiver, we'll work through you on the waiver process. So I think it's important to initiate that as soon as reasonably possible so that you can have full access to your funds as soon as possible. I was going to check to see if Susan Rice had any input on the indirect costs questions here, because she is my indirect cost expert, or if these are things that we feel we need to generate a little bit better response for and writing into the chat.
No, I mean, this is a topic of discussion because because the uniform guidance is effective 10/1. In general, any award made after 10/1 or amendment after that date and time, the 15% will apply. I think internally and internally with USDA, we are having some discussion about the ability to make any changes other than through an award and amendment. So that would be TBD. But if there is a new award or an amendment to an award, then the 15% would be effective on 10/1.
Thank you, Susan. I see a question here about the timing of the capacity grant RFAs, the capacity program RFAs for 2025. When will they be available and due? We are working on a more normalized timeline this year and working very hard to get those out to you midsummer so that we can get applications in hopefully before the end of our fiscal year, which is September 30th. We really want to ensure that we're on a more appropriate timeline to get those funds out to you earlier in the fiscal year and meet your needs for those capacity funds.
Yes, I want to add to that. So they are in the works as we speak. And I think we're looking at, because many institutions have a lot of folks on summer break, we're looking to see how far we can back that up so that you guys have more time and also can schedule them when folks are in the office. So working on that.
All right. One of these questions is a little too technical for us to answer here today. So I encourage you, if you have anything really specific about a specific grant program, allowable costs, to reach out to the program leader, the national program leader on that program, to talk about your project, your program, your ideas, and how that fits within budget categories, with how that might fit within your planning process. So, without us really understanding the specific program that you're referring to, it's very difficult for us to provide guidance on those specific questions. So please reach out to your grant POC that you may have with the national program leader on that program. Those names are listed in the request for applications. So whether it be competitive or capacity, we have administrative contacts and programmatic contacts listed there for you to ask more specific questions related to a program. I think there's one more question I want to follow up on regarding a voluntary match. Yes, if there is not a match requirement, it may not be used in the evaluation or the peer review process if it's specifically stated. However, if there is an expectation that you leverage cost sharing, it may not be an absolute requirement that you match 50-50 or 100%, but they are expecting you to do some type of cost sharing. I'm not really sure which program you're referring to. There may be an expectation that that be done, and it would be listed in the evaluation criteria. To what extent are you partnering or cost sharing, and how is that then weighted in those evaluation criteria? So if it's not listed anywhere in there, then you are correct. It cannot be enforced, and it shouldn't be used to rate your proposal in any form or fashion during that review process if it's competitive. I hope that helps, Sandy. All right. Well, I think we've rounded up our questions, and I wanted to go ahead and advance to the next slide and provide you with some contact information for you to reach out should you have questions. These are more for general questions. Again, I still encourage you to reach out to the specified program or administrative contacts listed for a specific program on the RFA. However, if you have more generalized questions, I encourage you to reach out to our awards management inbox for competitive awards, capacity grant questions for capacity awards, 1890s for our stakeholders at those institutions. We have ASAP assistance at our ASAP customer assistance email. Policy inquiries can go to policy. And for any dashboard related questions, electronic is that email address there. And these are all at usda.gov. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it to Susan Mouhidine. Susan, I'm not sure if there's any additional closing items that you wanted to follow up with. This has been recorded. It will be posted to our NIFA website for access. I'm not sure exactly how the slides may be distributed, so I'd like for her to go ahead and comment on that if she is able.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys all for attending. We really appreciate all your questions and everything that you've put into the chat. If you look at the Q&A or you go and look at the chat box, you can see that Nirja Tyagi has put in where this webinar where the recording as well as the slides will be provided to you all within the next couple of weeks. You guys should be able to see it up and running on our website. And then to follow up with that, we are going to have Doug Rose come on to give us some closing remarks. Doug?
Thanks, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see so many people attending this workshop. My name is Doug Rose. I'm the Administrative Operations Officer for NIFA. On behalf of the Learning and Development team and NIFA leadership, I would like to thank you all for attending today's workshop on NIFA funding and public-facing dashboards. As Drenda Williams, our Associate Director for Operations, mentioned earlier, the primary purpose of this event was to share with university key leaders guidance on USDA NIFA grants to their university and colleges and how to obtain additional information from the dashboard. I'm also glad that you got to meet so many of our key leaders and we'll be able to locate them in the event you need any type of assistance or have any questions. I would like to thank Kim, Tara, Susan, Alexis, and Susan for their presentations and for being the moderator. Finally, we are available to ask or answer any questions and comments about this workshop or assistance from NIFA. For example, if you have any suggestions on future workshops or just have general questions that doesn't fit into maybe some of the points of contact that Kim listed, you can always email us at adminopsteam.nifa@usda.gov, and we will be glad to answer your question. If we can't answer your question, we will send it to the appropriate people and make sure that you get a answer to your question. And if you would, Susan, post the adminopsteam.nifa@usda.gov link into the chat box. With that said, thank you all very much and have a great afternoon.